All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome into A Bettor Morning right here on the Better Sports Network, presented by Rival Fantasy. Rival Fantasy, your all-in-one fantasy sports platform. A little bit later on in the program, we will go through some Rival Fantasy stuff. I keep getting these emails saying, Fantasy Executive, you won your challenge. And you need to be joining me and doing the same thing because the emails are rolling in and the bank account over on Rival Fantasy is building like a building. All right, coming up on the program today, got a couple things we want to get into. Like I told you, we'll get to some Rival Fantasy challenges already rocking and rolling for week number 4. We will push in to week 4 of the NFL season, week 4 of the fantasy season. I got a couple of names that could be on your waiver wire that you need to take a look at. I also want to go over and discuss the bottom of the signal callers. You're going to get the fantasy execs bottom 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. Fantasy exec bottom 5 quarterbacks in the NFL coming up in just a few moments. But first, I got to start with last night's action. We had 2 Monday Night Football games last night. And you know what? For the most part, 2 halfway decent contests. You know what I'm saying? Not bad games. So the Philadelphia Eagles and Cincinnati Bengals, the 2 favorites, both walk away as winners. And also Joe Burrow actually did go ahead and make the start last night. Got through the game. Wasn't great. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I want to start off with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Philadelphia Eagles 25, Tampa 11. Tampa scored 8 points, touchdown, and a 2-point conversion in the fourth quarter. Other than that, all they had was a field goal. The Eagles cover. They laid a 6 successfully. And if you were on the under 44, then you won that one right there. Primetime unders continue to roll in. Actually, road teams also continue to be very solid against the spread this NFL season. Jalen Hurts, not great. 23 of 37, 277 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. Hurts has thrown 4 interceptions this season. Will he be on that list? Who knows? Baker Mayfield just missed the bottom 5 list. 15 to 25, 146, a touchdown and interception. Very uninspiring performance by the Tampa Bay Buccaneer offense. And you know what? That can be attributed to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles controlled the time of possession. They ran the football well. They threw the football well. Buccaneers only had 40 yards rushing for Tampa. They only had the ball for 21 minutes. The Eagles dominated the game. There was never any doubt that the Philadelphia Eagles was going to win that game yesterday. What up, Hal? What up, Toronto? Dave? What's going on? Hal, I get to that question in a minute. Jeez, Hal, can I get started first? Can I have a cup of coffee before I start asking fantasy questions? But nah, just give me a few seconds. I'll get to that. But like I said, Philadelphia Eagles, you know what it is. But listen, if you got DeAndre Swift, like you took a mid-round, late-round flyer on DeAndre Swift, shout out to you because you are in pretty good shape because DeAndre Swift went crazy again last night. 16 carries for 130 yards. Also, A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts had that animated conversation on the sideline last week. A.J. Brown just got fed target after target after target after target. 9 catches, 131 yards for A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith was 4 for 28. He had a quiet game. On the Tampa side, Mike Evans, 5 for 60 with a touch. And Chris Godwin, 3 of 32. So Chris Godwin, 3 receptions for 32 yards to go along with that. So basically, that's your main fantasy numbers right there. And, solid. Like I said, Eagles dominated the game. Good performance from the guys that you wanted to see. Maybe a little bit more from Devontae. But obviously, DeAndre Swift supporters, you got to be feeling pretty good about where you're at right now. What is next? What do we have? Oh, yeah. Rams and Bengals. This one last night. Cincinnati Bengals 19. Los Angeles Rams 16. The total, the number pushed. Cincinnati was a 3-point favorite. If you got them at 2.5 earlier in the week, you was able to cash that. If you got them before closing and you laid the 3, that's going to push. The total was 45, so the under cashes in that one right there. Now, Cincinnati got the win mainly because the Rams were a little bit inept last night. Matthew Stafford threw two picks. Puka was good, not great. Karen Williams was not dominant running the ball. As a matter of fact, the Rams only ran the ball for 71 yards on 13 attempts. So really the Cincinnati Bengals defense was able to control this game for the most part. But Joe Burrow, 26 of 49, 259, and an interception. Not great. As a matter of fact, if you saved him for last week, then you don't really feel good. Like if you for example, I just went ahead and played Desmond Ridder. He gave me 9. I wasn't going to wait around for Joe Burrow because he probably shouldn't have been playing. But guess what? Joe Burrow only put up like 11, so I didn't really miss out too much, even though it was Desmond Ridder. Now, I did have a fantasy league where I came back from deep on Sunday night and Monday night. I must have came back from like 60 down. I had Devontae Adams and I had A.J. Brown on the same team. So that team went off, so was able to sneak out and get a victory, and saw that this morning that my opponent congratulated me. But for the most part, last night, 2 solid games, nothing spectacular. If I'm the Bengals, I like the fact that I got the win. But if I'm the Bengals, I'm also worried about how the offense looks so far this season. Now, the Bengals, up next for the Bengals, they go to Tennessee to face the Titans. A lot of people are going to be on the Titans this week. Bengals on the road. Bengals don't look that great. That Titan defense, obviously, the way the Titans run the football, the Titans can't beat the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati has been to Tennessee each of the last 2 seasons and have beat them with no problem. That will likely be the case again this week. So don't let all of that talk about Tennessee that you hear this upcoming week sway you from making the right decision. Philadelphia Eagles' next matchup, a little bit tougher, is against the Washington Commanders. Now, styles make fights. Something you always hear me say, styles make fights. And one thing about this Commander crew is they know how to play the Philadelphia Eagles. Last four versus Philadelphia, 3-1 ATS, even 2-2 on the money line. The Commanders tend to go into Philadelphia and give them trouble. There's a couple Commander fans in the building. You know that to be the truth. Left hand up for the Commanders. So that number for next week opened up at Philadelphia -7. It pushed up to Philadelphia -8.5. I would grab that 8.5. I'd play that all the way down to that 7. I think that's where it closes on Sunday morning when some of the respected money gets in there and realizes that the Commanders are a tough task for the Philadelphia Eagles. So Monday Night Football in the books. Monday Night Football. #1 television show in America for a long time. If those of you who haven't ever known that. Like, Monday Night Football is an American staple, television staple. The great Howard Cosell, you know what I'm saying? So Monday Night Football is a part of the culture. It's a part of what we do. And it's the way we end week number 3 of the NFL season, getting ready for another week. For those of you who need to get some reinforcements off of the waiver wire, got a trusty list written right here. Right, like how Deion Sanders say here. Now, every league is different. You know, matter of fact, before we get to that, Heather, let's get to some of these questions before we get to the waiver wire stuff. My man Hal, 14-team Superflex, drop Zach Wilson, Richardson, and Fields are my QBs. How could you wait a minute? In a 14-team Superflex, the best quarterbacks you could get is Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. Those are 2 quarterbacks that could be on my list coming up. Yes, drop Zach Wilson ASAP. You might as well, you can't drop Fields because Fields will give you that rushing upside. You never know. But I'd be starting Anthony Richardson if he's not concussed. I would look at Jordan. Let me tell you something. I got a team in Underdog Best Ball Mania that's doing pretty good. The quarterback, Jordan Love, could be on the waiver wire. There's better options out there right now than that. So that's how I would play that one, Hal. Okay. All right. Okay. So then that's the only question we got right there. Wanted to make sure I got that out the way. Waiver wire enforcements from the fantasy executive. Devin Achane. If he is available, hopefully I pronounced that name correctly. If he is available on your waiver wire, you want to go out there and give him a scoop him up, pick him up, bring in some reinforcements. Devin Achane. I think that's what I said. Tank Dell is a guy who's getting the job done. Devin Achane. Thank you very much, Heather. Tank Dell is a guy who's been getting the job done for the Houston Texans. There was a couple of people that was on him before the season started. I was not one of those people. He's not available on any way. It was on the waiver wires, my waiver wires as recently as last week, but I overlooked him. I didn't think he would be able to keep it up, but Tank Dell is definitely a guy. If he's on your waiver wire, you may want to give him 2 looks because it looks like that Houston Texans offense is coming together and clicking nicely, especially if they look at him in a situation where you expect them to be playing from behind, which they could be at a number of different points this season. Rashawn Johnson, Chicago Bears running back. He's on your waiver wire. He's ready for pickup. Luke Musgrave, tight end for the Green Bay Packers. If you need a tight end, Musgrave's a good guy to target. He just missed a long touchdown this week. I can see them featuring him in the seam down the stretch until they get their guys completely healthy. So I like Luke Musgrave as a tight end, a pop and play, a pick and play tight end. Flag football, Mike Williams, torn ACL. Unfortunately, he's out for the season yet again, so feel bad for him. But you go to the waiver wire, Quentin Johnson, the young wide receiver from the Chargers. He hasn't really been getting too much work or getting too much stuff done so far this season. But the truth of the matter is he's going to have an opportunity, him along with Joshua Palmer, to pick up some more receptions in that offense that throw the football 40 to 50 times a game. So Quentin Johnson is a guy off to a slow start. If he got dropped early, he could be hanging out there on your waiver wire. You may want to give him a look this upcoming week. CJ Stroud, Hal, that's a quarterback that you can go pick up and play right now. He has been fantastic. The best rookie quarterback, really the best rookie in the NFL to start the season so far. So you can go ahead and pick up CJ Stroud. And then fantasy executive handwriting. Who is this? Marvin Mims. I just see two M's. I'm like, Marvin who? Marvin Mims. That is the name right there. If you need wide receiver help, you want to go scoop up Marvin Mims, Denver Broncos wide receiver, and then Jaden Reed, also wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers. A little bit of waiver wire action for you. Hal, what the heck do we do with Josh Kelly? That's a good question, Hal. I'm about to put him on my bench if I got a better option, and really I play in a deeper league, so it's really no option. Like Josh Kelly is like Bigfoot. He's like a figment of your imagination. You hear about how good Josh Kelly is and how he's going to step in and have these big roles and these big games when Eckler's not there. And then you see Josh Kelly had that one good game. The next two times we seen Josh Kelly, he was getting shut down by the Minnesota Vikings run defense. That's not a good run defense. It's very difficult after these 2 weeks to put Josh Kelly in your lineup. I'd be looking for a better option. As a matter of fact, 5:30 a.m. this morning, I was on the waiver wire trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do about Josh Kelly because he's in my starting lineup. Because I got a team where I drafted Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins. Cooper Kupp on the same team, mind you. So I don't want to hear anything about, you know what I'm saying? Injuries are injuries. You complain about it till you're blue in the face. Bottom line of the matter is it seems to always get to my team. I'm sorry, I got to calm down. I just was a little bit worked up, Heather. I apologize. So there you go right there. Shout out to Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer from Toronto. How about that? And then 14-teamer, there is only Brisket and Mike White. Well, yeah, in the 14-team Superflex, you're right, bro. But yeah, I'd roll Fields out there and Anthony Richardson. Zach Wilson has to go to the bench. And I'll tell you why Zach Wilson has to go to the bench, because right now, Fantasy Executive is about to rattle off and give you my rankings of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL through 3 weeks of the season. And by the look of that graphic, you can tell who two of these guys are already. I'm going to go ahead and give you the criteria, right? Because a lot of times people have lists, right? But they don't have no criteria. So like, okay, so you say, okay, well, I like this guy here, this guy here, this guy here. Based on what? So the criteria that I'm using to rank my 5 worst quarterbacks through 3 weeks of the season is I am looking at certain measurements that really can tell you if the quarterback is playing good and if the quarterback is capable of winning the game, if the quarterback is capable of making a big play down the stretch. I look at their interceptions, first and foremost. Can you keep the ball? Do you not throw the ball away for your teammates? That is criterion number 1. Criterion number 2 is your completion percentage. How many of your passes are you completing? You kind of want to be around that 70% range. You don't want to be nowhere under 60. That's terrible. If you get down to there, you shouldn't be starting. And also yards per attempt. Are you a dinker and dunker game manager? Or are you a guy that's willing to drive the football down the field? You want to come in around that 7 yards per attempt range. So let's go ahead right now and get it started and get it set off. This is a guy that, listen, I got to be honest, I didn't think he was going to make the list because the measurables for Jimmy Garoppolo are not bad. When you look at his yards per attempt, is around 7. He's completing close to 70% of his passes. The problem is Jimmy Garoppolo has turned the ball over, has thrown a jaw-dropping 6 interceptions through 3 games. That is not going to be acceptable. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in as my 5th worst quarterback in the NFL through 3 games. So that's where we are at with Jimmy Garoppolo. Up next on the list, I am going to go with, this may upset people, with New York Giant quarterback Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, through the first 3 games of the season, has regressed. He's thrown 4 interceptions. His average completion is under 6 yards. His completion percentage is at 64%. So he's throwing 2.1 of his passes in a touchdown, 4.1 of his passes in an interception. Not good for Daniel Jones, as he is now the New York Giants franchise quarterback while you look at his wallet, but he's not preparing or playing like that on the field. Quarterback number 3 on the list, Tennessee Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill. He's having a stinker of a season. Tannehill thrown 3 interceptions so far this season. Completion percentage 6.5, which is not terrible. Complete yards per attempt, yards per completion 6.5, which isn't terrible, but he's completing less than 60% of his passes. That is the danger zone right there. Now, up next on the list right here, and you know he was going to make the list because you've heard me talk about him before, and it is Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields. 4 interceptions, 6 yards of completion, less than 60%. Only 58% of his passes are completed. He throws the interception on 4.5% of his passing attempts. Touchdown pass, only 3.5% of his attempts. That is Justin Fields. He's the 2nd worst quarterback in the NFL to this point. And the worst quarterback in the NFL to this point is New York Jet quarterback Zach Wilson. Wilson, 4 interceptions on the season. The completion percentage is right above 50 at 52 and only 5 yards a pop. You might as well not play with a quarterback with the numbers that Zach Wilson are putting up. So there you go right there. Bottom 5 quarterback through 3 weeks in the fantasy executive rankings. Jimmy G at number 5. He's got to slow down these turnovers. Daniel Jones at number 4, turning the ball over, not completing enough passes. Ryan Tannehill's a disaster. Justin Fields doesn't know what he's doing. And Zach Wilson is the career backup. And Joe Namath said it well the other day when discussing the Jets' young signal caller. We have seen enough of him. Now, one thing we have not seen enough of is the Fantasy Alarm All-Pro subscription. Now, what you can do, if you need some waiver wire help going into this week, you got to make some big decisions. You can start a free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription. You get the DFS content and Week 4 picks for free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/win. Once again, 7-day free trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription. fantasyalarm.com/win. You get the DFS content and picks for Week 4 of the season. All right, it's time to head on over to our naming sponsor and rival fantasy. Like I said, I keep getting these emails. Fantasy Executive, you've won your challenge. Fantasy Executive, you've won your challenge. And listen, the Fantasy Executive is a guy who likes to win his challenges because I'm a very competitive dude. You know what I'm saying? So let me tell you about Rival Fantasy first before we get into it. Rival Fantasy is the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. Play challenges, Fantasybook, Fantasy Bingo, plus season-long fantasy football. If your fantasy football season is already a bust, draft a second chance season-long team with Rival Fantasies and receive $250 in cash prizes. Go to joinrival.com/alarm. Let me repeat that, joinrival.com/alarm. New users who sign up at Rival Fantasy get a $200 deposit match and a complimentary first play voucher. A lot of good things going on at Rival Fantasy. And let me show you how to win over there right now. We can go to the split screen view. Keenan Allen and Jared Goff. Jared Goff on the road versus the Packers. Jared Goff is a stiff on the road. We know one thing about the Chargers. They're going to be flinging the ball all over the field. And I think the Chargers are playing from behind in this game. I think the Raiders are going to be time and a half for the Chargers. So I am going to take my man, Keenan Allen, in this challenge right here. Fantasy Exec will take Keenan Allen. Entry confirmed. Next up, Devontae Adams or Jared Goff. Adams, and this is probably going to be Adams again, but I'll skip this challenge. I want to keep picking on Jared Goff, but why not? They keep throwing me. You easily take Jamar Chase in this spot right here, right? Because Jamar Chase going up against the Tennessee Titans pass defense, he should have a blast. You say, oh, well, Deshaun Watson is hurt. Well, I mean, not Deshaun Watson. You say, oh, well, Joe Burrow is hurt. Well, Deshaun Watson just tore this defense up, and he had looked terrible up until that point. Let's go ahead and go with Jamar Chase fantasy challenge over at Rival Fantasy. This is the Jared Goff thing. Jared Goff or Geno Smith. Geno Monday Night Football in New York on the road, but Jared Goff on the road is a fade. I will skip that one right there. So there you go. You see that. It's a lot of Jared Goff questions today. But Bijan or Jared Goff, interesting one right here. Jacksonville Jaguars run defense hasn't been great, Don't trust the Falcons on the road. I'll give this one right here to Jared Goff. So there you go right there. That is the challenges game from Rival Fantasy. And you know Rival Fantasy is the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. Play challenges, Fantasybook, Fantasy Bingo, plus season-long fantasy football. If your fantasy football season is already a bust, you know what? Draft a second chance team. I might need to look over there and do that myself because I got some injury situations that'll blow your mind. Rival Fantasy, if you do go over there for that second chance league, you can receive $250 in cash prizes. Go to joinrival.com/alarm. As a matter of fact, Fantasy Alarm new users who sign up at Rival get a $20 deposit match, and you can be like the fantasy executive and win your matches. Now, with that $20 deposit match comes a complimentary first play voucher. Want to give a shout out to the lovely and talented Heather Klein before we get up out of here. Alizé, week 4 flex option. Tank Dell, Judy, Miles Sanders. Off the top of my head, trying to think of these matchups, I think I'm going to go with Tank Dell in this one. Yes, versus that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I think Pittsburgh is live in this game, but I mean, I think Houston is live in this game, to be honest with you. I think it's a 3-point game, so I go with Tank Dell. Hal says any news on Cup. Not that I know of, Hal, but if I find out some, of course, you can hear it right here today on the Better Sports Network, or come back here tomorrow. A Better Morning. Corey Parson, the fantasy executive for the lovely and talented Heather Klein. See you tomorrow.